Hello, welcome back to the Tank Museum here in Dorset for a very special episode of Inside the Tanks. Today we're going to take a much closer look at what it takes to restore and maintain a number of vehicles, beginning with this, the M3A1 Stuart. And now I want to introduce a very special guest who's going to give us a closer look and a talk around the restoration and also the maintenance of these incredible vehicles. And it's Gavin from Armoured Engineering Limited. Gavin, firstly, thank you so much for joining us, and tell us a bit more about Armoured Engineering and yourself.
So I started doing tanks about 15 years ago, working for a tank dealer, and I specialised in the Stuart. And I left as the company was sort of slowing down. I left and set up my own business, Armoured Engineering. We've been doing that for about 6 years, and we specialise in the restoration and maintenance. Preservation of tracked military vehicles.
I mean, it's an incredible niche sort of like area to get into in the first place. So obviously your background is engineering, full stop, I assume.
Yes, so my sort of doorway into engineering was actually with the Army.
Oh,
so
right, okay.
I'm a REME reservist of 16 years.
Never mind.
Someone's got to be. Yeah, I've been doing it for 16 years as a reserve, still am. And I find that the engineering skills I learned in the Army and the processes and man management, planning, it all cross-references over to running your own business, and the skill set I learned doing this job, looking after historic armour, I can take to the Army, so the two things feed each other.
Well, so let's have a look at this particular one. I have to say we're going to look over these, series, a number of vehicles that you have worked on. This particular one, all of them, absolutely immaculate. I mean, the attention to details, we'll see later on when we get inside, is absolutely incredible. But what's the sort of background of this one? So when did it come to you?
Well, I actually know this tank from when I worked for my previous employer. So it was 2009. This came in as part of a large batch of Stuarts, 16. They all came from Brazil, all in a rusty condition, non-running. One of my first jobs working for this guy was to work through each vehicle and empty boxes out, take all the rubbish out, check them over, put tracks on them, get engines running and see how many we had and what condition they were in so they could be sold.
Now, I assume when you get a vehicle like this, I mean, it must be like different levels of like how bad they are. So all the way from the sort of like range target type all the way to something I assume which would be running. So what's the sort of first process you do? Do you strip everything down, or do you then, have a look at it first and say, right, this is what we really need to get started on?
So that's a really good question. So when you're coming into tank restoration, you should always consider what you've got first. Always thoroughly inspect everything, and it depends on its condition as to whether you fully strip it down or you just give it a bit of a tickle up. Whether do you just give it a service and a coat of paint and then see how you go, or it could be that it's a non-runner and the engine's seized and it needs a full rebuild. That would normally be an indicator to me that the rest of the tank is in the same condition as the engine. So that's sort of where you get to, and you would strip it down completely if the engine's seized. If it runs, then maybe just chuck a bit of paint on it and see what happens.
So compared to other vehicles then, how would you say the Stuart, I mean, what is it like to work on as a vehicle?
So as you can see, the Stuart is quite small. I'm slightly larger than I once was, but when we first got them in, I found them very claustrophobic. Obviously it has a 4-man crew, but the particular worst place to get is to one of the fuel taps underneath the turret basket. You have to climb in, turn round, and then slide underneath the basket on your belly. And if the machine gun was to move behind you, you can't get out very easily. So,
and we're looking at the front of it. I mean, for me, the Stuart, it's always been a very busy vehicle. There's a lot going on with the Stuart, and it's certainly a vehicle of this particular size. But when you're talking about, I mean, there must be bits missing, bits need. What happens when you just can't source, an item that you need? How do you get around that issue?
You try and restore what you've got, and if you don't have it, you try and find some, or the component, which you can find this stuff. It is out there. You just have to know where to look and who to speak to. But if you can't get what you need that way, and it's an item that can be made, it would be reproduced. So we could either borrow a part. Museums like here are great for we can try and loan a part, get it copied and return the original back. Or sometimes you have to reverse engineer it. So you would have to look at the problem, what the part is and what it does, and then redesign it to the best of your knowledge. And normally it comes out about right.
So for Stuarts, are there still a lot of spare parts out there? I mean, it was a very mass-produced vehicle anyway, so I imagine it's like on a scale of 1 to 10, not hard to get parts.
Yeah, so the Stuart is probably the easiest tank to restore in terms of parts. So as well as the 16 odd Stuarts that came from Brazil, there was 100 ton of spares came with them. in one job lot. I personally unloaded all 100 tons by hand and sorted them and figured them out. So I've got a good understanding of what parts there are, where they go on the vehicle. For this in particular, it was easy. Being restored, it was originally restored in the company that imported the tank. So the spares were already on site. So if I needed a part, you would go and rummage through the stores and find it. And I put them all there, so I knew where they were. So it was, in terms of ease, this was by far the easiest one.
Now, it's always amazed me. I mean, just look a closer look at suspension maybe. I mean, obviously, every tank is slightly different. There are things about everyone. I mean, especially suspension on this. I mean, to me, it's quite straightforward. It's a simple suspension, but it's easy to work on.
Yeah, it's fairly straightforward to work on, given you've got the correct tooling for compressing the spring. The rest of it is just general hand tools, knocking pins out, cleaning, re-greasing, painting and putting back together. It's fairly straightforward. It's quite a mundane task and not very thankful.
As I said, as a tanky myself, I mean, obviously I look at that and I think, great, because it looks quite light compared to what I was used to working on.
Yeah, in tank terms, that track is nice and small and light, but you wouldn't want one thrown at you.
And moving across here, long-range fuel tanks. Again, easy things to source, or? Yeah,
well, they're not easy to source. So this was actually a replica. So it's actually a steel barrel and it's been coated in like a rubber, and then it's been sealed together with resin. Yeah, they're quite difficult to find, but easy to replicate. From a distance, you'd never know the difference. But the things like the retaining straps, these are original straps that we've tidied up and reused, and sourced a modern turnbuckles to secure them.
So, I mean, again, going on to attention to detail, I mean, is it just like pamphlets, the material you've got to refer to this, or do you actually look at, perhaps, I mean, for this, obviously quite common vehicle, there are other vehicles already done, so you visit other vehicles and look at that and go, well, that's the way they've done it, or? Yeah,
so the internet is a massive help. Like it's immense, the amount of people out there that have done the research already on these topics. So you can find a whole host of photographs from different angles of this system, and it's not just the tank you have to think about. What we haven't done on this vehicle yet is the quick release mechanism. So they've got a quick release latch on the other side that releases the straps and the tanks fall off, and you can do that from inside the vehicle on a pull cord. But we haven't done the pull cord system yet, but we will.
And naming. What about naming for this? I mean, is this all historical naming? Does it come from something? It means something?
Most British tanks were given a C name from day dot. However, this vehicle is called Clementine. Obviously, it's an older fashioned name, so it's more of the period. And beginning with C would denote which squadron it would have been part of. So if it's C Squadron, all the names would have begun with C. And the name was chosen by the owner. He was given a dictionary of names, and that was what he chose.
And I know you actually mentioned off camera, but I thought it was fascinating, the air filter.
Okay, right, so the air filter, it's got an original Vortex air filter on it, but the bottoms of the air filters are extremely difficult to find. In this instance, this one is actually a cake tin from Tesco's. So an original filter could cost you a lot of money to have one made, because they have to be spun up and made to the correct shape. Whereas this cake tin probably cost you £4, a bead of silicone on the inside to hold the oil in, and paint it, and you'd be none the wiser.
And it works, obviously.
And it works. It's been on there for 8-10 years.
Brilliant. So we're now at the back of the vehicle. Can we have a look at the engine, Gav?
Yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, so if you could help us just hold that door in. So I'll just unscrew this bolt, which we use to lock them shut. One interesting thing with these rear doors while I'm unscrewing it is there's a small cavity at the top where you can accidentally put your hands. If you leave your hands there and open the doors, combined with the weight of the door, you could chop your fingers off on the top. So just be warned.
Okay, yeah.
All right. Okay, when you're ready.
So the heart of the vehicle, then, Gav, the engine, easy to work on?
It is when it's out. You have to take it out to do anything, really. However, you can do some simple tasks like changing a starter motor, for instance. You can do a carburetor with it fitted, but generally to access things like the spark plugs, you have to take the engine out, because this has two sets of spark plugs. You've got one this side, one set this side that you can get to just if you're a bit of a contortionist, and the other set are on the other side behind the fan, so to get to them is impossible when it's fitted.
And how long would it take you to take the engine out of this?
This is relatively straightforward. The worst bit is getting the armour off, but two guys that know what they're doing, no more than 4 hours.
So all this would have to be removed when you're...
Yeah, you'd undo the large armour screws, the top deck gets lifted off, disconnect all the engine and lift it out.
And reliable?
Yeah, if you keep them serviced, these are very reliable, yeah.
The M3 carried a crew of 4, was armed with a 37mm M6 gun and weighed just under 13 tonnes. It had a top speed of around 36 miles per hour. It was protected by up to 51mm of steel armour. So here we are now inside the turret. I mean, straight away, it's a hell of a vehicle to get into, not a lot of room, and it's quite unbelievable. We are so cramped, and you consider a crew of 4 for this. So not an easy vehicle, I imagine, to work on, Gav.
No, so you've just highlighted, yeah, getting in and out just to get in it and sit down is difficult. So you can imagine climbing in with a component in your hand and trying to bolt it on. You're actually in the way of yourself with a lot of things.
And straight away you look around, I have to say the attention to detail is, well, certainly like nothing I've ever seen before. I mean, it is remarkable. And, you know, we spoke earlier about, it's all very well, the exterior of a vehicle, it's all very well working on the engine, you've got schematics and things, but what about the interior of a tank? I mean, how do you sort of reference points for that? Where do you start? Yeah,
so like everything, you look for photos to start with. Sometimes you can find some sketches inside manuals, they'll be buried in there or in the back in an annex or something. But a lot of the time we do that reverse engineering, like remaking stuff. So just be a bit of an archaeologist on the inside. So you look at what you've got, you photograph it intently, take it out, restore it, and then try and put it back where it came from. But in that process, you're trying to figure out what that part was used for. If it's not listed in a stowage diagram, then you would use your intelligence to try and figure out what goes where. And for instance, the 45 caliber ammunition storage there, if you know what you're looking at, they're all the same and they hold a set item. And obviously this has a Thompson machine gun, and you've got to store the ammunition somewhere. So we've managed to source the magazines and clip them in, and that's funny enough where they go.
And there's even a flashlight just at the top there as well. Right angle torch.
Yeah, right angle torch. Yeah, every bracket, every clip and every box has got something in it, from dummy grenades in grenade boxes to the inner ammunition inside the magazines. Everything is there.
And we, talking about the breach and everything, attention to detail. I mean, to me, this looks like it would have looked. I mean, this is a real breach. It's a real breach block. But you notice there's a few extra things which are clearly not part of the era.
Yeah. So the main armament on this is a live cannon, the eyes of the law. You could put a blank round or a live round through it if you so wished. I probably wouldn't these days because of the the structure of the steel. But what we've done on this particular vehicle is convert it so it fires on propane and oxygen. It injects gas for a set amount of time, and then on this timer it will detonate using a spark plug, and that's all controlled using that trigger to your left there. You can traverse the turret left and right and fire both the main armament and the coax, all on that control, and it all works on gas, so you can simulate firing an event.
And I've just got the elevation hand wheel just by my right knee there. Was there anything inside here, in thinking about particularly about the turret, that was really hard to work on? I mean, problems you had with?
Yeah, so apart from the space, the hardest thing to get going in here was the gyro system. So in front of me, I've got the gyroscope itself bolted to the gun. And that entire system was to keep the gun level whilst you're travelling. So as you go over humps and bumps, the gun would stay on target, and the gyroscope is the item that keeps it level. And that's all activated off a motor on the floor. It's an electric motor with a hydraulic pump at the end, and that controls like a ram on the side of the gun and keeps everything in the right place. And the owner being very picky and particular about what he wants. He wanted everything, not only to have all the items in the stowage, he actually wanted everything to function as it should have done. So he gave us a budget to work to try and get it going. And thankfully we managed to do it just about.
And when you came, I mean, something we didn't mention before was, I mean, it's very hard to see in here because obviously it is so cramped, but I mean, like radio installations, for example, I mean, the radio is sort of down there at the moment, you can't actually see it from there. How do you go about sort of like identifying what was the right radio for the period, and I mean, how on earth do you get them?
Yeah, so obviously the Stuart is an American vehicle, American-made vehicle, but the British used them, and this one's been done to replicate that use in the Western Desert. And the British wouldn't have used the American radios, they used number 19 sets. So that's what we've got fitted in here. And as with anything, if you hunt long enough, you can find these items. Finding the complete radio that functions, like this one does, is slightly more challenging, as they use the old valve system. But yeah, it is out there, it is achievable, you have to just be patient.
Fantastic. So driver's compartment then, Gavin, you know, from watching you get in there, not the easiest to get into?
No, it's slightly easier than the turret. You have to get in a crawling position on your hands and knees and then walk yourself in backwards. But once you're halfway in, it makes sense. You just sort of fall in the seat.
So what's your takeaway from them, from driving this vehicle? Good, bad, indifferent?
This is a challenging drive, but very rewarding, is probably how I'd put it.
And it looks quite, I mean, to me, the controls look quite straightforward. You've got tillers. Maybe you could just talk us through briefly some of the main controls.
Yes, you've got your standard tillers for steering left and right. You've got a clutch pedal and a throttle pedal on the floor. But the point to note on this vehicle is the gear lever is up under your right armpit. And if your tillers aren't adjusted properly, particularly the right-hand one, when you're reversing and steering right, you end up knocking the gearbox back into neutral.
So, but with the gear lever there, just looking at it now, I mean, how do you physically change gear then?
With difficulty, you don't just sit in the seat and everything's available. You have to move your body around the cockpit to get yourself to do things. So you put your foot on the clutch, for instance, you'd lean to the side so you can then look down at the gate so you know which gear you're going into, and then make sure you're judging your revs right and you're going in a straight line. So there's quite a lot to think about.
Brilliant, Gav, thank you. I mean, firstly, for spending so much time with us today. It's been really, really interesting. And of course, we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, no problems.
The M3 was the first US tank used by the British and has since seen action with numerous countries around the world. Prototypes of what became the light tank M3 first appeared in 1933. The British service name Stuart came from the American Civil War Confederate General J.E.B. Stuart and was used for both the M3 and the derivative M5 light tank. It was first used by the British in North Africa in 1941. Its crews loved it for its reliability and smooth running, nicknaming it the Honey. Whilst it was popular, its armour and firepower was soon outmatched. Later in the war, the Stuart was relegated to reconnaissance roles once other tanks, such as the Sherman, became available. And that's it from us today. Thank you so much for watching. Of course, if you do enjoy this content, please don't forget to like and subscribe. And join us next time when we're going to take a closer look at the restoration of an M24 chassis.